Hello, Jillian. Thank you very much for being with me today. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very well. Very excited to speak to you because I've been trying to find someone who is kind of specialized in the area of relationships. I've been trying to scout around and look about, and I came across your profile and I was like, wow, this page looks amazing.
Oh,
there's-
thank you.
yeah, you cover lots of intricate details about relationships and sometimes questions which maybe people are afraid to ask. And I don't know how you come up with these ideas, but you really put together these scenarios and give loads of different ways to look at it. And it's really eye-opening. So I thought this is great, not just your template cookie cutter answers. It's almost like you're talking out of maybe personal experience or I don't know, like an in-depth knowledge from the background study. So what is your background to know so much about relationships? Tell us about yourself, Jillian.
Okay. Let's see, where did it all begin? So I had been teaching yoga and I've been studying yoga um for about 22 years and practicing for almost 22 years, and I was teaching it for about 17, 18 years. Um, I would say up until the pandemic began. And 7 years ago, so I've always been super fascinated about the connection between the body and the mind and how we use our physiology to impact our psychology. And really the study of yoga is the study of the mind. I mean, you use the body as the vehicle through which you understand consciousness or the mind better. So it's something that's always been fascinating to me. And relationship has always been totally fascinating to me. And 7 years ago, I went through a really harrowing time in my life. My marriage was ending and my mom was dying of lung cancer, and it was all happening at the same time. Um, and there were other things too. It was just a really, really dark night of the soul time. And I definitely had one of those those moments. I went through a phase in my life where everything fell apart, kind of thing. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. And interestingly, leading up to that, I was having sort of a crisis of identity. I didn't know. I knew that I wanted more. I thought that I wanted more through my yoga career, but I just didn't know I just didn't know. I was lost. And so my friend, who was also a coach in my building that I lived in Brooklyn, New York, she found me one day. I was sitting outside with my dog, and it was very visible on my face and my body that I was going through something terrible, because you can't hide something like that. And she sat down next to me and was talking, and like I said, she was a coach, and I decided to hire her to just kind of help me through that time. I also was seeing a therapist twice a week at that time, so I'm a really big advocate of getting as much help as you need. And she actually introduced me to Tony Robbins, who I knew, but I was not in that world. I thought he was just like an infomercial dude. And she sent me some stuff of his that a lot you can find on YouTube now, but 7 years ago just wasn't as accessible. And I watched something that was a recording from one of his events that people don't really have access to unless you do some of his trainings. And she sent me a few, and I was totally reluctant and resistant. But I had nothing better to do that evening, so I put it on, and I was immediately inspired and immediately impacted. And that just sort of began my journey. I thought, I recruited the help of lots of people, and I would say that he was one of them. And so I just listened to a lot of his stuff, and it's what got me up in the morning, and it's what got me determined. And I just resonated so much with the technique. And I looked into, my friend said, why don't you become a coach? And I was like, oh God, I don't even know where to begin. And I looked into schools, and I decided to do his and went to a bunch of events. And there's a really, really strong focus on relationship. And one of the things that I sort of at the time unconsciously said to myself, I mean, I said this to myself, but I don't think it was as concrete as my memory of it, which was, I need to, like, why am I 40 getting divorced? That, I know that has a lot to do, this is the fact that I was upset about that has more to do with culture and conditioning than it has to do with reality. But at the time, as a woman being 40 and I'm getting divorced, I had all these meanings that I attached to that, like loser, has been, I'll never meet anyone, like life is over, which is tragic, because in many ways life just begins at 40. At least it has. That's been my experience, and it's been the experience of many people I know. So I was determined to figure out why this relationship failed. I felt like a failure. And so I just was like, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to study everything that I possibly can about relationship and bring my past experience into it. And so and then ever since that day, I mean, I've been studying relationship and the psychology, male and female psychology, male and female brains, neuroscience. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I'm not studying in some way. I'm obsessed. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. That's sort of
Yeah.
the medium version of
Yeah.
how it all began.
So someone in your position who, let's say you've been through a relationship which has been, I don't know, heartbreaking, and let's say you've been out of relationship for a long time because of it, allowing yourself to maybe discover things, figure things out, do some study, maybe have a holiday, relax, take time out from relationships and love yourself again and that sort of thing. And it comes to stepping back in the field, okay, let's get back into a relationship. And you're a little bit reluctant. You want to make it happen, but you're like, man, my last experience, it wasn't nice. I know the next relationship doesn't have to be that way, but I'm a little bit scared. What do you say
Yeah.
to those type of people?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. There are some people who can jump right back in the game very quickly, and that's, they have that sort of mindset, like it's just sort of like, next, I'm ready for next. And of course, there are people who do that because they're not working on what happened in the past, and they're going through some sort of denial. But overall, I think that's a really healthy mindset. I actually think that, what I had to do for myself, because I'm just so sensitive and it was just so overwhelming. And I definitely stayed traumatized from that longer than I should have, I think, longer than what is actually healthy. But, for people, look, the older we get, the kind of scarier it is to kind of jump back into another relationship, because we've had more relationships that have not worked out leading to that point, and there's a lot of trauma there, and there's a lot of pain there. You can't work out all your stuff alone. You got to work it out in relationship. And so there comes a point where, I would tell people, I understand you're scared, but think about everything that you learned, because that's really the most important thing. if you go out into the dating world and your mentality is, or your belief is, it was all their fault, guess what? It's good. You're gonna run into more problems.
Yeah.
But if you go out in the dating world and you're like, I see my part, I've really taken time to reflect on that. Now I'm ready for a different partner, and I'm ready to be a different partner in a relationship. And I really want to encourage people to have that kind of attitude. I'm ready to do it. And it's going to hurt sometimes, but the only way you're going to grow, because people are like, oh, I have to grow more and do that. No, you're going to grow inside of a relationship. And I would just encourage people to really notice where their fear is controlling their lives. So if you're really waiting to get into a relationship, then how much is fear controlling your life? And look, of course, there's people who really choose to be single, and I think that's a fine choice. I think it's a good choice in many ways. But so that's what I would say. You're going to let fear control you, or you're going to get back in there and have the courage to show up differently in a relationship than you did in the past.
Right. So they need to sit down and realize what their error was in the relationship as well, why it didn't work out,
Absolutely.
rather than blaming. Would you say that it's probably not, like, I don't know, like maybe a system a person should follow before they can get back into a relationship? What sort of steps they should follow? Okay, they've had a few things happen in the past. Okay, what's the checklist? Or I need to make sure that I'm in a clear frame of mind, and I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny because I wrote this heartbreak workbook that was based on the steps that I took, which is really for someone who's gone through a breakup that really shook them to the core. Not every breakup is created equal. Some of them hurt, some of them are devastating, right? So there are steps. I think that it depends what stage you're at. So, when you first are heartbroken, you kind of just have to go back to the basics. So if you're devastated, it can be a huge achievement to just shower that day, honestly, or to eat that day, or to make sure you're hydrated that day. It depends how deep the devastation is. So the first step would be just to go back to basics. Go, get some air, make sure you're clean, drink a lot of water, eat, all that stuff. So that would be the first thing. And then, and then there's several more steps, but one of the things that you have to do, and maybe you have to be in that stage for a while, because when you're grieving any loss, it's grief, right? So there's many different stages that you go through, and you'll have so many different emotions. You'll feel like a victim and be depressed, and then you'll get really, really angry, and then sometimes you'll be in denial. I mean, it's like it really screws with your head in the beginning. So you just have to go back to basics, talk to trusted counsel, try to stay as grounded as you can, really do your best not to isolate. And as you start to feel stronger, as time starts to pass and you start to feel stronger, and that's when you really have to start to think, okay, what really did happen? Because people tend to go back and forth between really blaming the other person or blaming themselves, and feeling like a failure. And you need to have more perspective and more objectivity. And that is that it takes two to, it takes two. So it's really about seeing your part. Maybe you tolerated things that were things that you no longer want to tolerate. Maybe you tolerated behavior that really shows you where your deficits are and your self-worth. Maybe you um, maybe you um, maybe you clung too much, or you were too controlling, or you were avoidant, or you were anxious. Maybe you thought you were a great communicator, and you realize, oh, I'm not really that great of a communicator. Maybe you were shut down a lot. Maybe you were jealous a lot. And I think it takes not everyone does this, but I really want to encourage people to think about how they showed up,
Yeah.
and to look at those things. So those would be the most critical things. And then to kind of come up with a new blueprint of what their life can be like without this person.
Mm.
That's the few, that's sort of like the basics to
Yeah,
really
yeah,
think
yeah.
about.
Makes total sense. Total sense. Thanks for that. Um,
Yeah.
you tend to hear stories of it's normally women that they are with someone with the idea that they will change them, knowing that their partner is, I don't know. Well, they've got hope that they will change their partner.
Mhm.
Their partner's like, I don't know, an alcoholic, or he's gambling, he's got some problem.
Yeah.
He's not making the effort. It's just, but she's got this hope that she's gonna fix him.
Yeah.
What is that all about? It tends.
Yeah.
I don't really know that of men that think that they can try and fix. So I mean, it does happen. It
It
does.
does. It happens in the reverse more than you think.
Oh, okay, okay,
But
cool.
it looks a little bit different. It's like for men who have that with women in particular, they seem to be attracted to the broken bird.
Okay.
Yeah, and they want to rescue and fix and all of that. So it looks a little bit different like that, or they want to be the person who really helps them. So I used to think that it was more women too, but through my experience, I do see it both ways. But either way, um, I think one of the what one of the things that I believe to be the most prevalent issues inside a romantic relationship is partners trying to change each other, and they're not even doing it consciously. um Partners trying to change each other, and sometimes that has to do with they see their partner's potential, like you're talking about, like a woman who falls in love with an addict, or someone, or doesn't even have to be an addict, someone who's perhaps he or she's very, very talented, but they have no motivation, right? They're not doing anything with their talent. And there's a number of reasons why that happens. The first would be because they're very attracted to this person and they want it to work. But deep down, they know that it could never really work if this person doesn't get their crap together. So they're trying to control it so that they can be in relationship with them. It's an interesting thing. It's like,
Hmm.
no, I know you can do this. I know you can do this. And so instead of being their partner's cheerleader, where they want the person to succeed simply for them so that they can be happy. Really deep down, what they're trying to do is change their partner so that they can be happy, if that makes sense.
Right. I see. Yeah. Right.
So because then if they don't change, well, then I don't know, like, are they going to be able to show up? Are they going to be okay? So it's a really sneaky form of control. And you don't have to, this doesn't mean you're a bad person or even a controlling person. It's just the things that we do. Because the alternative would be, I accept you for who you are, and you don't have to be anything other than who you are. And the other alternative would be, I gotta go. I
Yeah.
gotta leave.
Way.
And yeah, I gotta end the relationship. And so those other two options are not options that the person wants to take. So they go on a sort of an unconscious they take on sort of like an unconscious challenge to change that person, and it's always a dead end. It never works.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's interesting, yeah.
They do it for themselves, not even the partner who they're with. They don't really. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if that person, because it's funny you say, it can be the other way around, because I have a friend who has a brother who is a musician,
Mhm.
Um, he's got great talents and he spends all his money on all this great equipment, but he just doodles on the equipment and he does nothing whilst his wife goes out and works extremely hard and taking care of the kids. And he's in dreamland, you know.
Yes.
She's like, look, man, you know, you need to sort your stuff out. This is not good, you know. Um, yeah, that's interesting.
And that can work in a relationship as long as there's acceptance around that, as long as you don't want them to be anything other than they are. And you have every right, if you're in a relationship with someone who's, you know, not making quote unquote something of themselves, you have every right to not accept that. But you can't be in the relationship and trying to change it all the time. You have to decide, I'm either going to accept it or I'm going to exit it.
Yeah, yeah. But don't argue about it. Just make a decision and don't make it awkward in the relationship. Yeah. What about what is your thoughts on, okay, so is sex important in a relationship? Can a couple have a loving relationship without sexual intercourse, oral or sensual play in any way? I mean, I've known of couples um, to be together and not have sex. I know a couple that used to have sex on a regular basis, and then um, uh, the guy, he got diabetes and then basically lost erections and it doesn't work anymore, and the relationship seems to be working. And people that have been together for a long time and they no longer have sex. But then you also hear, when I've spoken to people, they say that sex, it's important. There's no way I'm having a relationship with no sex. It is so important. It's the most important thing ever. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Is it really important? Is it in between? What's your thoughts?
It depends on the people. And I think that you just, with your examples, demonstrated that beautifully. Sex means different things to different people. So there are some people where sex is not that important to them. It just isn't. And there are others where sex is really, really important to them. So it really depends on the couple. If sex is important to two people and yet they are not having sex, it's a problem. But if there are two people who, you know, that's just not their connection and sex is not that important to them for whatever reason that is, and they're not having that much sex, then it's fine. So it's really, really important that there isn't some overall, you know, everyone, you know, there's over 7 billion people on the planet, and there's lots of different types of relationships. And as long as both people are in alignment with one another, on the same page, anything goes. So it really just depends. It of course it becomes a problem when two people look, passion, the attraction that you feel in, let's just say sex is important to you. The attraction that two people feel for one another in the beginning of a relationship changes over time. And that's okay, because I think that after a certain age, we realize that all those, you know, some people get addicted to the beginning of a relationship because there's all that lust and fun. And it's kind of fantastic. But I think after you've lived a certain amount of years, you realize, you know, it's not that cracked up. You know, it's like not that amazing. It's like, I don't want to live my life just having a bunch of, you know, three to 5 month relationships. I want something deeper. I want something deeper. But passion is something that we need to work on, because passion lives in the realm of uncertainty, of mystery, of separateness. And yet emotional intimacy lives in the realm of togetherness and friendship and all of that. And so people have to work on passion. And then, you know, usually when sex goes in a relationship, there's a lot of different reasons. I don't know. Do you want me to get into this?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, I think
yeah,
that'd be great.
yeah. Okay. So the reason why passion and sex goes away in a relationship, a lot of people think, well, they've been together a long time. Yes, that's sort of like the huge, that's like the umbrella, but there's so many things, there's so many parts to that. One could be time. If you have a family and you're running a business and your mind is all that, but even that is an excuse. It's people stress. Stress is the number one reason, I think, what I've observed, why couples stop having sex with one another. Stress from work, stress from parenting, physical stress, the exhaustion that comes from chronic stress. Stress where you don't, because when you're stressed, we have if you think of two separate states of consciousness, we have stress and then we have freedom. Let's just say where we feel alive, where we feel like ourselves, where we're having fun. And they're complete opposites. And when we're kind of in our bodies and we're relaxed or we're having fun or we're in flow, however you want to describe it, we become more erotic beings typically. But when we're stressed, everything about our physiology is like the shoulders go forward and up, our sternums get short, our bellies get short. It's like no one was thinking about having sex in those moments. They might be thinking about the release that an orgasm gives them, but they're not thinking about truly connecting with their lover, with their loved one, their spouse, their partner in that moment. So stress, and with stress, people change. They stop acting like themselves. And with stress, you stop, women will, for example, really need to feel safe and protected in order to truly open sexually with their partner. And so if their partner's always stressed or they're always stressed, then they're not really finding the connection. Women need to feel that sort of connection with their partner before they feel like opening and all that.
Mm.
So that's really the main reason people get distracted with their stress.
Right, right. Okay. So, um,
Or they
well,
get too comfortable, or
hmm?
they get too comfortable. They get too comfortable.
Mhm.
They're in their sweatpants every day watching Netflix and like eating their ice cream on the couch, which by the way, I love. And I think that's the friendship part of the relationship, but that's not the erotic part.
The passion is lost. The effort is no longer being made. It's like, yeah, we're together. We don't need to do all that fun stuff anymore.
Yeah. Or like, I don't really need it, or no, you have to generate it. Um, because people get so comfortable in their relationships, which is great. There's a lot of certainty, but they fool themselves into thinking, they'll never leave me.
Yeah. Well, what would you suggest for people like that really need to, spice things up and I don't know,
Yeah, well,
things are a bit.
first I would just say I would have them first address if there's any underlying issues where there's maybe a break in trust, there's a lack in trust. If they're feeling like their partner is either not protective of them or safe for them, or if their partner is too closed, not being vulnerable. There's some people who are very turned on by vulnerability, and then there are others who are very turned on by strength, mental strength more than anything else.
Mhm.
And so you would have to see, what are the underlying issues? Is there, has someone stopped being vulnerable with the other? Has someone been so consumed with their stress that they're not showing up as the powerful person that they once were, which is what attracted their partner to them to begin with? So that would be the first thing. And then other things, making time for it. If you've got a big family and you've got a lot of responsibility, schedule it. Sorry, I know it's not as romantic as in the beginning, but like I said, that is all, it's not what it's all cracked up to be. And schedule it.
I
Go
was
on a date.
I was going to mention that maybe a little bit later. Um, well, might as well mention it now. The whole, yeah, like if you're in a relationship for so long and you, yeah, the spark isn't quite there, and you're just even, you might be having sex, but it's too routine.
Mhm.
Like, to the point where you're scheduling sex. It's like,
Yeah.
you're going to have it a Saturday afternoon after, I don't know, you have a glass of wine, and it's, you know exactly what positions it's going to be, and you just know. So it's
What do you do? Yeah. So you may have to, for example, if you're really, really busy and you've got kids, you may have to keep the schedule, but spice it up. Spice it up. You have to really act as though um, it's the beginning. I don't care if you have to role play. I don't care if you have to be like, no, we're taking this one to the bathroom. I don't care, or the kitchen table. I don't care if you have to go out on a date or on an adventure. I mean, you have to, it's like you have to co-create the magic. I don't care if you get, if she wants to get a new pair of underwear, or you buy her a new pair of underwear. It's like it's having that openness with one another that's really so important. um and the only, it's like when people say, well, I'm bored. Okay, well, how are you boring? Right? Like, so if like, oh, the sex is getting boring, okay, you're boring then. And that's really what people have to start to think. Okay, if the sex is getting boring, I must be the problem. And I think that if more people would say that to themselves, something's going on, I must be the problem. And people moved more towards being totally radically accountable for themselves inside of a relationship, a lot of relationships would improve or they wouldn't end.
amazing. That's amazing. How does a person uh, deal with someone else who is emotionally distant? You're in a relationship, but I don't know, intimacy is not a problem. When you're having sex, it's wild and
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. But when it comes to sitting down and having just a chat about, I don't know, maybe a couple of issues, the other person can't seem to connect with you.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Does
Yeah, it
yeah.
does make sense. There are so many nuances to this. Um, so, you know, one would be that sometimes I find that certain couples or certain people within the couple want to talk about the relationship too much. So that would be one thing that I would look for. Like, is the person really shut down, or are you always wanting to talk about the relationship? Because I don't believe that it's healthy for couples to always talk about the relationship. I mean, I don't think it's healthy to never talk about the relationship. You have to have hard conversations sometimes. But a really common mistake that couples make when they're going through a hard time is always rehashing and talking about the relationship. And that's a nightmare. And it's particularly a nightmare for men. And I always am talking to women, the women that I work with who do date men, and they're always wanting to, like, when are we going to talk about when are we going to talk about this? And it's like, he's avoidant. No, he just doesn't want to talk about the relationship all the time. So that's one thing to look at. The other thing is, that does happen. And obviously, if you're with someone who just will not open up, that's a problem. That's a problem. And there are people who, I have to say, you have to really see if this is something that you can live with, because they may not be at a level of maturity, honestly, that you are in. And that is something that you have to reevaluate. Also, what's even more common is, if you want to talk about something hard, and you find that you're in a relationship with someone who has more avoidant tendencies and doesn't want to talk about it, how you bring it up is very important. So you could just say, I have some things on my mind that's kind of bothering me, and I would love to talk to you about it. When are you available?
Yeah.
And so that's really important, because some people get very anxious and they're like, we need to talk about it now. And sometimes you're getting someone when they haven't prepared themselves emotionally for the conversation. And some people do need to get themselves prepared emotionally before they have a tough conversation. And so I think that that's very important, is to start up with that. You could also say things like, I know this is really hard for you. I know it's really, really hard for you to open up. How about I just share what I'm feeling, and what I need from you is to listen and to just give me the feedback that you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that goes a long way for someone to say to their partner, let's say, one person is just not that verbal and the other one really is, for them to just say, okay, I hear you. I hear you.
Mm.
Because one of the most frustrating things about someone who just is sort of shut down is that you feel like, are you listening to me? Do you hear me? Are you registering? Like there's no there. So that's really important. So if you are someone who struggles with opening up emotionally and having those sort of conversations that could build a lot of intimacy, emotional intimacy, for them to become better listeners, and then to say, I hear you, I'm going to think about that, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Rather than having to do it in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be less pressure on the individual, I guess, because you do have a lot of people out there that just don't talk that much,
They
and
were never taught to have those kind of conversations.
yeah, it's kind of weird, right? Like, I don't know, like parents don't always speak to their children about that sort of subject, and then they're out in the wild trying to figure out, okay, so how do I find a partner? Okay, I found someone. What do I do from here?
Yeah.
Right, well, we have sex. Okay, I guess let's work that out. Okay, this is cool. This is good. Oh no, there's a problem. Like, what do I do here? How do we talk about this? How do we resolve this?
Yeah.
And
And they usually do what they saw their parents do.
argue,
Yeah.
maybe.
Or not argue. Like everything's always fine.
Right.
So then there's some people,
With the carpet.
then you'll have like two people who come together. Let's say you have person A, and that person was raised in a family where it's like you talk about everything. Everything is just all out on the table. You don't let any stone left unturned. And then you have person B who's like, their whole family dynamic was, don't worry about it. Let's not, who cares? Move on. And then you've got these people who find each other. We have to talk about this. We have to deal with it. We have to address it. No, who cares? Let's just move on.
Mm-hmm. You got to really understand each other.
Yeah.
Really important. That's cool. What about jealousy issues? I think that's big in a lot of relationships. Let's say you've had some previous horrible experiences with dishonesty, and it keeps playing repeat in your head. Or you might be checking your partner's phone and all that sort of thing. I had that with an ex. I mean, she was next level, which is the reason why she's an ex. Other than that, she was amazing. She was such a great person. But
It's too bad.
yeah, she was a great person. But it was like, whoo, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go in a supermarket, and I naturally would say good morning to people, whether male or female. If I see a cashier, how you doing today? Oh, amazing. Have a little conversation because they're there for 8 hours or whatever. It's just polite. It's nice to be nice.
Yeah.
But for her, it was like, what are you doing? Why are you flirting with her? I'm just talking. If it was a man, it would have been the same thing.
Of course. And even if yeah, I mean, it's impossible. I don't know. I mean, I walk down the street. If I see a beautiful person walk by, whether it's male or female, I mean, I'm only attracted to men, but I'm going to notice a beautiful woman. I mean, we're visual, I'm going to look. I can't help it. I mean, I'm not going to stare, but I'm going to glance. I think we all like to look at pretty things. So it's a little difficult. Yeah, that's impossible to be in a relationship with someone who has those kind of jealousy issues. It's impossible. And then they have to go to therapy, they have to work with a coach, they have to figure it out, because you sabotage relationships that way. Jealousy is really challenging. I think that in a committed partnership, I find it to be very useful and effective and healthy when a couple can have an agreement about what's sort of allowed and what's not allowed in their relationship. And it's not about what you're allowed to do and I'm allowed to do. It's like you look at the relationship as sort of this separate entity, almost this thing that you're protecting. So when couples, I think it's important for couples to discuss, whether or not close friendships, if they happen to be heterosexual, what close friendships look like of the opposite sex, what friendships look like with people that you slept with before or been in a relationship before. And I think that those are one of the important conversations, alongside with children and money and all of that stuff, and religion and spirituality, that couples should have. And I think that it's really important that you're clear about what you want. I think that I don't think that a couple should allow anything or anyone to disrupt the sanctity of their bond. And so you have to be sort of mindful of that, like, is it really worth me pursuing this friendship with this person, this attractive person, even though I feel nothing for them and I'm totally committed to my wife or my husband or my boyfriend or my girlfriend? I don't know. Like, is it really worth it? Is that gonna just create complications? As far as social media is concerned, because this is where I see the jealousy the most. And I see it the most in women and men who date men who are scrolling at it, because men are much more visual than women are, and so men will scroll, they just are. And so they'll scroll and look at, women are much more, they want to feel like protected and all of that. It's not that women aren't visual, but men will look at a beautiful woman and feel tons of attraction. Typically, women need to have a conversation with this person before they feel the attraction. So it's a really big problem. Porn use is a really big, so this is where I see jealousy the most. And I do think it's a problem. I think it's a problem that so many people scroll through social media looking at half naked people all night. I mean, I do think that's a problem. I think that's something that people need to address. And I think that if I were in a relationship with someone who was constantly doing that, I would have a problem with it. I don't regard myself to be a jealous person. There's just something. So I think that people really need to talk about their values when it comes to this. Mm-hmm. We get into a relationship and we have to accept the fact that there's an inherent risk when we get into a relationship. And the risk is that you can get hurt. The risk is that you could get cheated on. The risk is that you will be left. The risk is that someone will stop loving you when you have not stopped loving them. The risk is that you won't get along. There's a risk. And if you have serious trust issues, that's something that needs to be addressed, because at some point, like what happened with you and your ex, it's like you could never do anything right. Everything you did was a problem.
Yeah.
So, and we have to more trust ourselves that if it doesn't work out, we will be able to handle it. So jealousy, it's I could talk another hour just about jealousy, but I really think that people need to be mindful of how they scroll on Instagram when they're in a relationship, even when they're not in a relationship. I think they have to be mindful of the friendships that they have with others that could potentially become an attraction, therefore a distraction from your relationship. I think these are important things to consider.
Okay, cool. And there's some people who they've just got jealousy issues, to be honest. And it
Yes.
doesn't matter what relationship they get in, it's got nothing to do with another person scrolling on social media or
No,
having
they're going to be nuts regardless.
yeah.
They need to get help. They need to work on that.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on how do I put this in a clean way? Bed buddies.
Okay, got it. Wait, one more thing that I wanted to say about jealousy is that if someone has a problem with chronic jealousy, it's because they are constantly seeing themselves as less than everyone else or less than the other person. And so again, that really speaks to more of a self-worth issue. And so that's where the deeper work has to go. So I just wanted to add that. Bed buddies, I have no issue with bed buddies as long as you're not kidding yourself and thinking this is a relationship and it isn't what it is. That you're not hoping that it turns into a relationship. And then next thing you know, you've wasted 2 years of your life on someone who wanted nothing more from that. So that's what I think about that.
Do you think that there's I don't know, a healthy way to stop the whole bed buddy situation? Be like, you know what? It's been a good 2-year run. Let's call it a day.
Yeah. Even if it's a 1-month run, but that's funny. It really depends on what you want.
Between two people, like let's say for instance, guy likes girl, girl likes guy. They're both busy. They've got really busy lifestyles. It's like, look, I don't have time for a relationship, but hey, I'm kind of feeling you. Let's make something happen. And what do you think will be a good like precursor to this before they get, intimate? To make sure that there's a decent exit strategy.
Here's what I would. That's funny. Here's what I would say. If you want a relationship and you meet someone, and women do this all the time, and they meet someone they really like, and he's like, I'm not really ready for a relationship, but let's just see how it goes. And she's like, okay, that's what I don't want people to do anymore. Don't settle for that kind of connection, because and this is not a diss on anyone, because we've all been in this place where we've felt desperate for connection and desperate for love. It's part of the human condition. But so I wanted to preface it by saying that, but what I really want to help people do is just to not be desperate. Don't settle for that kind of connection when what you really want is a real relationship. That's a dead end. And I just don't want anyone betraying themselves like that anymore. But let's say you find yourself in that, and then you develop feelings and you want it to turn into something more, but it's not turning into something more. The exit strategy is, I really like you. I have a really good time with you, but I want more. And I don't think you want more. And so therefore I can't see you anymore. It has to be super direct.
Yeah.
Super, super clear and direct. I find it so tragic, people finding themselves in these quote unquote false relationships, fake relationships, when what they want is more. And then they look back and they're like, I can't believe I wasted so much time on that. I find that tragic.
Yeah. And I question if that can, I understand that part, but like, I question, there's many people who say, yeah, just want a bit of fun or whatever. But I'm like, I don't think that's ever going to work out. I just don't know where two people can be like, do you know what? Yeah, we'll cut off at this point. Like if you find that
Oh,
you
I see.
found someone, then yeah, let's just call it a day. It just doesn't.
It,
These are
it
two
doesn't
human beings.
work.
Like,
Someone gets hurt. Someone always gets hurt.
yeah.
Someone really always gets hurt.
Let me ask you, what about I received a message on social media one time because sometimes I'll do Q&As and a person said, my ex wants to basically have fun with me. What do you think? That sort of thing. What's your thoughts
Mm.
in people just having fun with an ex?
Okay. I'll say this. I'll answer this very simply, and hopefully it'll be the answer that you like. I believe in really trying that our aim should be to make decisions in life that make our lives less complicated, not more. And so what do I think about that? How complicated is that going to make your life? Is that going to make your life messier, or is it going to make it cleaner?
Yeah, man. It's brilliant. You could just leave that there. Yeah. Leave that there. I like it. What would you say about couples that are obsessed with each other?
Obsessed with each other. What do you mean by that?
Mm, um, maybe acting quite desperate for each other. Maybe it could be desperately in love. I don't know. I don't know. Some people just act quite, um, I don't know, maybe phoning each other all the time or just like, um, what does obsession mean? Just like going through the person's photos, like, oh my God, wow. I don't know. Just like,
Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
okay, you know,
I
for
think it's
each other.
wonderful
It's
if,
not one way.
if it's reciprocal,
Yeah.
and that's not the same thing as codependent. Codependent would be, I've shut out every other aspect of my life, and my life is the relationship very much to the detriment. I'm not getting anything done. I can't focus on my life. We don't spend time with other people. We don't spend time with friends. But I think that if you see a couple, and if they've been together for a long time and they're still oohing and ahhing on with each other, I think that's fantastic. I don't know if that's what you mean necessarily, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're
I
always
think
like
it's
that.
great.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's reciprocal, I think it's, because what happens in a long-term relationship is that we stop feeling awe for our partner.
yeah.
And I think the more in awe we can be of each other, which means that we have to be curious about each other, which means that we have to think, oh man, there's so much more I have to learn about this person. I think that's wonderful.
Mm, yeah.
We take each other for granted
I
too
think,
much.
yeah. Yeah. Not asking questions anymore, feeling as though you know everything and
Yes.
not, I don't know, creating a little bit of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and yes, we have to create mystery, but we have to also remember that the person that we're in a relationship with is very mysterious, because um, there's a lot that you don't know about the person you're in a relationship with, even when you know your partner very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're a separate human being. Like,
Yeah, think about how you can barely understand yourself.
I
And you
know,
think,
still trying
like,
to
no, I
figure it out.
understand.
You know,
I can
people going
barely
to
figure
therapy.
ourselves out.
Huh?
Yeah. We can barely figure ourselves out. And then we think we have the other person all figured out. We think we're an expert on them. And that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I know you got to go. One more question quickly. What does it mean to be more conscious and mature in a relationship?
That's a great question. Well, it certainly does not mean that you never make mistakes. The way that I would see is that maturity and consciousness and being more conscious in a relationship is having a high degree of awareness and also a high degree of accountability and a willingness to apologize immediately after messing up, because you will mess up. So it's about not always punishing your partner when you're upset. It's about communicating, knowing that in a relationship, this isn't about, you're not trying to one up your partner. You're not trying to win debates with your partner. What you want is peace and harmony and love. And so you show up and you do the best that you can do to transcend all the teenager and the little child that lives inside of you that wants it your way and is afraid and plays games, and you take responsibility. And I think that that is a huge part of it. And also I think that being conscious in a relationship means that you're not constantly thinking about your needs and whether they're getting met or not. You are equally concerned with whether or not you are meeting their needs.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do get their back up very quickly when it comes into a little bit of an argument, a little bit of a confrontation. It's like, wait, okay, let me hear you first. Let me hear you and understand what you're saying before I answer. Some people are just straight verbal immediately.
Yes, straight to defensiveness, and it just means like, it's a simple thing. Like, I'm getting really pissed off right now and I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret. So give me 20 minutes. I'm going to go cool off and then I will return. And then partner B, instead of saying, no, you got to talk right now, you say, okay. That's a perfect example of what maturity in a relationship looks like.
Right. Well, Jillian, it's been amazing. Jillian, not Julian.
Yes. Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
British name. Jillian's a British name.
It's a British name.
Yes, with a J. Yes.
Okay.
Did you not know?
No,
yes,
I didn't.
It's an old English name. Yes.
Right.
Grandparents.
Jillian. I heard it from as a male. Is it like a unisex name?
No, Julian is male, but Jillian is female. Yeah.
Okay, that's
and
it.
And Jay, from what I understand from my mom, is the British version and G is the American version.
Okay.
Who knows? I have grandparents, heritage in England. So there you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where is it you reside?
I'm in New York City.
Oh yeah, New York.
Yeah.
Nice. Look, so where can people find you? I know you're on Instagram. What's your handle on Instagram?
My handle is my name. It's at Jillian Turecki. And then for those who are looking for stuff on strengthening their relationship with themselves, dating, being in a relationship, heartbreak, that's all on my site at jillianturecki.com.
Fabulous. Guys, you got to at least check out her Instagram. She gives so much free advice. So imagine what it would be like to have like a one-to-one session with you. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you very much again. I greatly appreciate your time. Have an incredible rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
God bless. Take care.
Bye.